gratitude to Director Davis and the whole San Francisco Human Rights Commission. Gratitude for the partnership that we have with them, the Institute on Race, Power, and Political Economy at the New School. Dr. Davis has been talking about the economic rights component of human rights well before it came into vogue. Right now, it seems like the world is starting to understand that it's not just political rights, civil rights, social rights, cultural rights, but the fifth pillar in that component of human rights has to be economic rights. Voting when you're hungry is not freedom. Big shout out.
That's a bar.
Big shout out to my team, the Institute on Race, Power, and Political Economy. I see a lot of them in here. I get credit. I get to stand up before you all and say things, but trust me when I tell you, I certainly couldn't be here without them, and it really is a team effort. The story you just heard from Pinky Cole is amazing. And it's not just her being valued at $100 million. It's the work that she's generating for others as well. Not a hater, but a creator. So it's an amazing story.
That's another bar.
14 more.
Maybe I am around. But here's the dismal part of my talk. It's going to be a lot more somber than what you heard. Because we shouldn't have to have such amazing stories to have access to wealth and economic security. We have structures that inhibit us from having that kind of access, and I'm going to talk about that right now. So racial disparities in wealth, access to capital, and business ownership are inseparable. In fact, wealth and capital are prerequisites for entrepreneurship, and Black Americans have been systematically prevented from accumulating wealth and accessing capital throughout American history. America's unjust racial business gap and racial wealth gap are rooted in a history that has privileged white people with financial advantages to buy crucial additional and intergenerational advantages for themselves and their children. Government, political, and economic interventions have privileged white Americans over Black Americans with access to both economic and political resources and the iterative and intergenerational accumulation that come along with those resources. This contrasts to a history where Black and Indigenous Americans, where their personhood and whatever capital they may have established has always been vulnerable to exploitation and extrapolation by state complicit confiscation, destruction, fraud, theft, terror, and other acts of violence. While Black Americans make up about 13% of the US population, they own less than 2% of small businesses with employees. And they collect less than 1% of all business receipts. Existing distributions are products of racialized, exploitative, and extractive histories, and without capital, inequality is locked in. The rhetorical elegance that we use with words like freedom and choice and a specific notion of rights, not economic rights for people, but economic rights for property. It's a rhetoric that is devoid of an honest reckoning with the immoral practices by which that property has come to be distributed in the first place. So to be clear, the neoliberal framing of our political economy that situates a proverbial market as the great, fair, efficient, and even colorblind arbiter of our worth, of our effort, and our value, well, that naturalizes poverty and inequality by castigating it as the result of unproductive and deficient behavior on the part of those that are at the bottom of the distribution. That is, subpar outcomes are seen as resulting from personal choices of individuals and communities. An inclusive economic rights frame turns all of that on its head by locating poverty and inequality as a result of an absence of resources. That is, poverty and inequality are the result of policy choices. Choices that deny people the resources they need to live meaningful lives. What we need is policies that better understand the roles of power and capital, and how power and capital itself can be used to alter the rules and structures of transactions, in other words, markets, in order to privilege that capital and power in the first place. The way that wealth is generated, it is wealth that begets more wealth. The racial wealth gap and the business gap have nothing to do with Black behavior or choices, and everything to do with capital and racism. As I stated earlier, capital and wealth are prerequisites for entrepreneurship, and Black Americans have been denied access to that. For most small businesses, personal and family savings is the most common source in which they start that business. But we know from the racial wealth gap that the typical Black household has about 1/10 of the wealth of a typical white household. That's 10 cents on the dollar. Access to capital is often an insurmountable barrier to entry for Black entrepreneurs. And lack of wealth also limits the access to get a collateralized business loan to start a business. Black-owned firms are 7 times less likely than white-owned firms to get a startup business loan. And for the few Black-owned firms that are able to secure that startup loan, the size of that loan, the average size of their loan is about $35,000 compared to about $107,000 as the average loan for a white-owned firm. Another statistic, Black Americans, again, make up about 13% of the U.S. population and receive about 3% of government-issued Small Business Administration loans. If these programs were more equitable in how they were administered, Black firms would have received an additional $2.5 billion in loans in the fiscal year 2019. Still, instead of focusing on capital endowments, what our governments predominantly do, the predominant strategies to address the business gap, is focusing on entrepreneurship seminars, technical assistance, and tax breaks for wealthy, often white, investors to produce wealth and business opportunities in the Black communities. Sadly, the racial wealth gap itself, combined with uneven access to credit and neglect, particularly from federal lending agencies, play a crucial, critical role in maintaining that racial business gap that I've been describing. So I'm going to end with a reality check. Again, I'm the dismal person up here today. Fostering Black business in and of itself will not solve the racial wealth gap, nor generate racial inequality in general. Everyone can't be Pinky Cole. The vast majority of American households do not own any business equity, Black or white. And in our modern economy, it's simply not designed to accommodate small businesses for everyone. Yet, closing the racial business gap is an admirable and just goal. People should have access to pursue their entrepreneurial spirits. We know also that well-financed Black firms incubate other additional effects for Black communities. It increases wealth in Black areas, it creates additional jobs, and it reduces the persistent shortages of essential goods and services in Black communities, including healthcare, childcare, and access to quality food. So I'll leave you all with those thoughts and look forward to a invigorating conversation.
Give it up for our 2 amazing cultural and so to kind of continue this conversation and move into some of the Q&A, I am honored to introduce to everyone Dr. Saida Leatutufu Birch, who is going to help moderate this conversation. And then with some local practitioners, we have got Tiffany Carter, who is owner of Beach Cali, who has locations in downtown, kind of almost San Francisco, and at the Warriors Chase Center. Do you want to come up, Tiffany? And then we have, I don't know where. Yeah, that's right. This way. And then, I don't know, Sean, are you in here? Sean Richard, who is one of our cannabis owners, equity cannabis owners from Houston. And then I'm very grateful that we have Dr. Lakeisha Hallman, who from the Pop-Up Village, who's been doing amazing work all over, but helping businesses get started. And so, welcome this amazing panel. Thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you, Director Davis. It is my honor to be before you today. And this is themed panel. I know we are going to have a time for questions and answers and a dynamic conversation. And so if I was to go through all the accolades that are present on this stage right now, we'll be here all day. But I just want to name a few. We have two recognized and honored 40 under 40 panelists, Pinky and Dr. Key. We have the first Black-owned equity cannabis dispensary on the stage in Sean Richard. And I'm sure there's a first Black woman-owned restaurant at the Chase Center where the host of the national champions, Golden State Warriors, and then Dr. Hamilton is a first in many economic accomplishments. So a whole bunch of firsts happening up here. And let's get this conversation started with, there was so much triumph as well as trials shared in your comments. And I want to look to our practitioners. So Tiffany, Dr. Key, and Sean, what stood out for you? As you think about Black business in the comments from Pinky and Dr. Hamilton, what stood out? What's the urgency behind what we heard?
So I think, well, first, I'm so excited to be here. So thanks to everyone who made today possible. I'm a proud Atlantan on the stage, hanging out in San Francisco. I'm a proud Black woman business owner. But one thing that really stood out is something that Professor Hamilton said around the need for Black businesses to get capital. But what I was looking at in standing on the stage, that it was actually being personified. What happens when you inject capital into a Black business? You get a Pinky Cole. So Pinky Cole was able to raise how many millions of dollars?
$25 million.
$25 million. So when you all see things like the Brooklyn location, the Harlem location, and all the locations in Atlanta, that is due to what Professor Hamilton said. Give Black businesses the money that they need, because we're innovative enough to do exactly what this unicorn entrepreneur has been able to do. So those things really stood out to me.
Since we dropping bars today. They say this is a big rich town. I just come from the poorest part. So, a lot of things stood out to me. But first I want to say that, I gotta write my stuff down, y'all, but Black capitalism, and me and my daughter who's right here, like if any of y'all follow us on social media, we debate everything. So I am really for Black capitalism. She's a socialist, so she say. But she sell Yeezys and everything else. We ain't gonna go there. Black capitalism is Black power, and entrepreneurship is the highest form of activism. So many things that was there resonated with me, to be able to open up a restaurant in San Francisco, in a place that I'm from. Like, it's not easy to do, but because of government and different things, I've been able to do that, to have a space in the Chase Center, that's less overhead for me. I don't gotta have a restaurant. I ain't gotta worry about a lot of things that I probably would have to worry about, so yeah. Thanks, Sean, did you want to respond?
Yes, first of all, thank you for having me. Big shout out to Cheryl Davis. Y'all put your hands together. We go in the back, love you, little brother. So let me just say this, as being the first Black equity-owned dispensary in San Francisco, I'm one of the first, it's been a lot of firsts for Sean. You know, I'm one of the first 8 members of the Omega Boys Club that was sent to Clark University in Atlanta.
Yes.
You know, got kicked out and came back home. But,
Shout out to HBCU.
so, you know, came home, and I've always been an individual that worked for itself. I'm 54 years old, so out of my 54 years on this earth, I probably had about maybe 5 to 10 jobs. Most people I know that's my age had about 30, 40 jobs. But because I always work for myself and I come from the community, you know, and what I was learning, being the first member of the Omega Boys Club is get rid of that stinking thinking. You know, what I know I owe. And what we have to do is invest back into the Black community, invest into Black business, teach the young brothers and sisters that they can do and be anything they want to be by investing in themselves. But we have to invest in themselves. We have to teach them. If we don't teach them and show them, they ain't gonna know. And so we have to understand that the investment that we put back into the community is gonna be the investment that we're gonna be able to sit back and say, we helped that young brother get that, and you go to the next person and give it to him. The game is to be told, not sold in the Black community. But we sell the game all the time to each other. And everybody else is not selling the game, they're giving it to their communities, and that's how they win, and we constantly keep losing. And we gotta build that back up and give the game to these the young Black folks that's in our community.
Right on.
Thank you. I do. You know, it's interesting when Derek was talking, he was talking about that racial wealth gap. But there's something in our communities that we don't talk about that is so prevalent. It's that relationship gap.
Yeah.
Do y'all know what I mean when I say that?
Yes.
Okay? If you know the right people, you'll get the right things. That is what culture that we're living in now. On top of that racial wealth gap, you gotta have the right relationships, because if you don't, you're gonna be standing in the background. There's so many people in the world that probably cook better than me, but I have been able to build really good relationships. Does that mean that I have an advantage over some people? By default, yeah, because I got good relationships. So how can we get Black entrepreneurs to be able to be better positioned to have those relationships? And it's about the resources, the conversations, things like this, for us to be able to provide access and safe spaces for them to be able to engage with other people. What I realize in our communities is, and I was guilty of it myself, we got a pride issue. Right? And sometimes when we're prideful, we don't want to open up and talk to people. This is one of my best friends in the world. I love this girl so much. And one thing I respect about her is when I first met her, she went start reaching out to me. And I'm like, all right, I got to be friends with this girl. Like, she was having a festival and she wanted me to be a part of her. But anyway, I say all that to say that we have been able to build a relationship. Now, there's a flip side to that coin. That sometimes people aren't able to be advancing in what they want to do because they haven't been able to foster those good relationships, whether people don't want to talk to them or they just haven't been able to be in amongst those spaces. So we just got to do a better job, myself included, which is what I do through my foundation, to provide that space for people to be able to do that. Because that's something people really don't talk about either.
I see you, Dr. Key, and I want to stay on this topic too, so I want you to respond, Dr. Key, and also what you're talking about is multiple forms of capital. So when we think about wealth, we typically go towards money and economic capital, but we know that wealth is holistic. As you all shared in your comments, and Pinky, you talk a lot about mentorship, and you just mentioned relationships. So for the panel, and I'll start with you, Dr. Key, how important is it to invest in those multiple forms of capital, social capital, cultural capital, in order for Black businesses to thrive?
It is the mind shift that is not talked about enough. And I don't think mindset is talked about enough. In order for us to be able to build these networks, there's something internal that has to happen. So there's an internal phenomenon that must take place within every individual. And since we're talking about Black businesses, there's an internal phenomenon that must happen into that business owner that admits, I cannot do this by myself. That admits that iron truly sharpens iron. That in order for me to really grow and be able to expand my network, I have to build something that attracts people to it. People are not attracted to dormant ideas. And you have to know when your idea has legs and when your idea has wings. as people respond to things such as the Slutty Vegan, such as my company, the Village Market, people began to wonder, like, what is it in that burger? When you draw people in, then you start thinking about what is this mutually beneficial relationship. And so for entrepreneurs and those who are thinking about scaling their businesses, nurturing relationships is paramount. But nurturing that relationship within yourself is the only way that you can open the door to any other relationship and be open and receptive to what comes with it. I think that's extremely important when we think about economic mobility, when we're thinking about launching businesses. And really quickly, on one of my first relationships with Pinky, the question was, could Slutty Vegan be a part of the Village Market? And I said no. And everyone thought I was crazy, and I think she did too, but we're friends. But I said no because I created the Village Market for businesses that were aspiring to be where Pinky was. And so it was better for her to come out as a speaker rather than a vendor, because I wanted to make sure that space is being made for entrepreneurs to grow, but to be able to be in space with a Pinky Cole. So as a business owner, we have to know that when opportunities that seems that this could actually take your business to the next level, when to say no, when to be thoughtful, that no, but yes, with a pivot.
Yeah, let's do that to tell the truth and be authentic. Because we need that. And I want to going beyond personal relationships and collaboration with respect to access to capital. We know in this room we have philanthropic partners, government partners, even corporate partners. So I want to look to Derek in terms of gaining access to capital. How important is it to foster relationships across sectors, and what could cross collaboration across sectors look like?
So when we do cross-sector collaborations with entities like philanthropy, my hope is that it's demonstration purposes, but at the end, the power rests with the public, and that's government. So one thing I want to bring up is during the pandemic, we're talking about capital, economic capital, political capital as well. So in the pandemic, between February of 2020, when we hibernated the economy, and April of 2020, 41% of Black businesses went out of business. We know that the PPE loans that went out were administered through banks. And Blacks historically have not had the same type of relationships with banks as some white businesses. So what if that policy was administered through the public bank, the Federal Reserve Bank? Why do we have to use commercial banks as intermediaries? Perhaps it was perceived as efficient, but that had racial impact on society. So, I'm alluding to this notion of the public and political capital, and I'll say a little bit more, and then I'm going to stop. Politics, economics, and race have never been separable. We just had a conversation earlier about Black capitalism versus socialism. Those are polemics that largely belong in the classroom. In reality, we've always had a mixed economy. We should have people have a right to entrepreneurship, but we should also have people to have a right to see a doctor if they're sick without the stigma and vulnerability of finance at their most vulnerable point. So, these things, who was the person that really pushed Black capitalism? Richard Nixon. The only agency in government that's specifically targeted towards minorities is the Minority Business Enterprise, MBE. And Richard Nixon founded that, and he founded it without teeth. It's not well funded. I mean, it received well less than 1% of all government outlays. So I guess the point I'm trying to get to in the end is that political capital, that we need to organize and collectively demand that our government does things and seeds our business in a way that they did other groups as well.
Yes. So I want to shift a little bit to get to what the talk is called. It's called For the Culture. And Pinky, in your comments, you mentioned your original business wasn't aligned with who you are. And what we know to be true is that Black culture bleeds influence. So can you talk to us about the importance of your culture, of Black culture on business, and some of the practices about why the intersection between culture and business helps it to thrive? And then this is for all of our business owners on the panel as well.
Well, simply put, we all know this for a fact that Black culture moves the needle. I'm talking about fashion. I'm talking about dance, hair, skin, and nails, culture and entertainment. All of those things fall under that umbrella that supports Black business. So I'll give the example. I was joking about how I'm a rapper, but I'm really a rapper. But anyway, BET did a hip hop cipher, and for those who don't know what BET is, just press Google. But BET did a hip hop cipher for the hip hop awards. I'm a restaurateur. I have a restaurant. I sell burgers, pies, and fries. I ain't had no business in being in nobody's cipher for the BET awards. But let me tell you what happened. When I did that cipher, I incorporated my business. I talked about how Harlem location was opening, right? Do you know I got 1 million impressions? Do you know I got 10 secured interviews just from that? I'm telling you that because there's something about Black culture that is so influential to strategy, to marketing campaigns, to growing your business and relationship building. Quite frankly, it's innovative. When we think about new products and like what these big corporations want to do and their rollouts and how they create strategies for their new items for their businesses, they look at our innovation first, the things that we like, the things that we think about. What music are we listening to? What clothes are we wearing? What are the new designers that are coming out that we are tapping into? They pay attention to those trends and make sound decisions based on those trends. I was talking to a private equity investor, and I'm even embarrassed to say this, but it was the truth. He told me that somebody on TikTok, a Black woman, posted a company with, I'm not gonna say the company, but she was wearing the item of the company that he owns. And she only had about like 100 followers, right? He told me that that one post on TikTok made this company $5 million. That's how much money she got from it. Zero. She didn't get any money. So when we talk about how Black culture moves the needle in business, we move the needle in business. We literally create a space for people to build off of our backs based on the things that we naturally do because Black people are cool. Black people are fun. Black people are smart. We're entertaining. When you come around us, there is a different type of energy that you don't necessarily get anywhere else. And people make decisions based on all of those things. And people capitalize off that for the wrong reasons. And we need to start doing a better job at owning that again and making money off the things that we put out so that we can reserve those into our communities and make them more equitable.
I'm gonna come to you next, Sean, but I did want to mention, somebody referenced black women making black women amplifying the fact that Black is beautiful and our lips serving as pillows to kiss. What Pinky didn't mention is that she launched in partnership with the Lip Bar liquid lipstick, which I am wearing today. And I did want to tell y'all it passes the kiss test. So go ahead and get that Lip Bar times Slutty Vegan liquid lipstick. All right. Okay. Black culture. You're in the cannabis industry. We heard what President Biden did yesterday. So tell us, how's it influencing you?
You're so right about what you just said. Let me just say, I started an organization back in 1995 called Brothers Against Guns. 2 of my brothers was murdered, 99 and 95. And so at that time, it wasn't hip to be against the violence. It was always hip to be in the violence. And being that I come from that, you know, and come from that community. So my mother always told me, tell the truth, speak your mind, and be real about it. So some people may say, Sean's arrogant. I'm not arrogant. My mother always told me to be convinced. And I'm very convinced on what I do. I always work for myself. I had one of the biggest clothing stores on San Bruno Avenue. So everybody used to sell clothes and they used to sell music. I said, well, let me incorporate it and I'm gonna sell everything. You know, so I had everybody coming in there. So like you just said, the Black culture is hip. The fact that I'm the first Black-owned equity dispensary owner and I partner up with Cookies. And so everybody was like, oh, cookies, cookies, cookies. But now, what everybody really understand is Sean and Sean's team. So I wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for a group like the San Francisco Equity Group, who put me in this position, you know what I'm saying, to be part of where I'm at today and part of something bigger in the culture that's bigger. We've been smoking weed for a long time. I was smoking weed. But we've been smoking weed before any culture was smoking weed. I'm keeping it real. But at the same time, we don't get no credit for it. We don't get no credit for what's going on today. We don't get no credit for how it branched off and blew up, and we don't get nothing. Now, let me just say this. White America been at the front of the table selling marijuana, having cannabis dispensaries for many blue moons. We're just now coming to the table, but we're last. So now it's our time. So when we speak out about it and we tell the truth about it, they don't want to hear it. But no, at the end of the day, only way you can get in through equity. And most of the people of color in here is equity that have been suffered by the wrong drugs, that have been held back. So we move the needle, like you said, and we got to keep moving the needle. You know what I'm saying? Fashion, hair, food, clothing, everything. But at the end of the day, it's about all of us or none of us. And when I say all of us, I mean the black community. We got to come together. We got to work together. We got to show each other, like you said, building a relationship and having that relationship. I started this in 1995. I built a relationship with every single mayor up into this mayor to this day, on establishing relationships from 95 all the way up until now. So we have to make sure that we take the younger generation behind us and bring them along and sit them at the table and let them meet the mayor. Let them meet these supervisors. Right. Sometimes folks that's up in here that's my age, we need to shut up and sit back and let the young folks talk. Yes. Hear them out. Tell us what's happening. Because that's the only way we're going to see the future better for them and for us.
Yes. And Dr. Chiquata.
I want to come back to this, Sean, I love everything that you said. I want to come back to this conversation around culture, marketing. So I think there's a time to be cool, and there's a time to understand how to be profitable with your coolness. What I really want for us, and our mindset is essential for me. What I want for Black people to understand that it's not enough for us to be cool.
Right.
That we have a strategy behind every single thing that we do. In order for us to grow this and create this economy that we're talking about, we have to start cashing out on some of these innovative ideas, the way that people literally look at everything that we buy and determine what they put into market. I have helped thousands of entrepreneurs across this country own their IP. That's their intellectual property. That's not something sexy, but that's something that's needed. Yeah. So it's very sexy. Yeah. I'll take it as sexy. But also they're trademarking. Because when this funnel comes down, and Sean just talked about this, it is literally how it's designed that we're always behind the wave. We're not leading it. Because when it came to this cannabis industry, so many Black and brown people have been incarcerated until it came to a place that others felt that, oh, I can get some cash from this. Because cash can be made, now we can have a conversation around the wellness from cannabis. But at first it was a disenfranchisement of cannabis. And so for us as Black people, I think it's very important, since we understand how this wave works. We have years to understand this model of capitalism, this model of disenfranchisement, to know the only way for us to truly move a needle, we must own things. We must surrender to the land and own it. We must buy in our own commercial properties. We must buy commercial properties as a collective and determine who is going to be open for business in the next couple months. I hope Tiffany talks about that. But we need to talk about owning real estate, putting Black business in those spaces, having relationships with CDFIs, having relationships with our mayors. I sit on the board for the mayor for the city of Atlanta. I'm on the largest economic development board for the city that's determining where money flows in the city. There are many boards and board appointments that I was asked to be on. I said, where does the money go? Because I know when I sit at the table, thousands of Black businesses sit along with me. And I'm ensuring that money that goes to housing goes to Black communities. Monies that is deployed for Black communities going to Black schools. Monies that is being deployed for Black businesses will actually get there. So I think we have to be really strategic with how we start thinking about cool. I don't want to just be cool. I want to make a wave, but I want to ride that wave and lead it.
Yes. I don't know about y'all. I want you to respond, you and Dr. Hamilton to respond to the question about culture, but also I want to invite members of the audience. If you have questions, I can sort of see, but go ahead and raise your hand and we'll make sure to get a mic to you. So Tiff, let's hear from you and then we'll come to Dr. Hamilton and to members of the audience for any questions you might have.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can just go behind what everybody said. We are the culture. We are a $1 billion culture. You know, Boosh Cali, we are one of the highest grossing restaurants in the Chase Center. You know, so they are like, yeah. You know, but how is that reflected when you walk into the Chase Center, you know, as to the other restaurants that's there, you know? And we are working on a third location. That's going to be really big in San Francisco. During the pandemic, a lot of Black businesses closed. We grew. We grew record sales. I didn't even get a PPP. I was making so much money. I was like, cause I'm a big problem. Yeah, right. Well, I'm from the hood, and I was just like, I ain't messing with the government. Like, I was doing, and you know, we continuing to grow. So, what I'm learning, everything is relationships. Like, you know, like it's so important. Like right now, I'm fighting multiple sclerosis, so y'all might see me limping it. Like I don't even be wanting to go places, but I gotta go mingle. I gotta go network. Everything I got is because of it's from relationships. It's from networking. It's so important. Like everything, you know. But I think one of the biggest things that I love to show in my restaurant is that we can be successful as Black people. We can run successful restaurants. I see everybody at Boosh Cali, from the top to the bottom, they all sit at the counter. Everybody. And they love it. They just love it. I'll be popping my stuff. I ain't gonna do that. But then I see Pinky and I'm like, shit, I gotta stop. You know, like for me, yeah, like, you know, I've been doing this for so long, and it's not a lot of people that look like us. You know, to see a young Black woman killing the restaurant industry, like I've been following Danny Myers, and Pinky probably the only one who knows who that is here. It's like an old white man's game, you know, so, you know, but to be successful in just business, period, like, you know, my daughter just graduated college. I was able to I can't even front like I put her through college necessarily, but you know, it was an ease, you know, of having a business and for her to graduate and she ain't got to rush to find a job. So I'm like, you work for me, like, you know, so she do all my payroll, all that stuff. She bother me all day. I ain't, you know, so it's beautiful though, like just to have that. I'm like, this must feel what privilege is like, you know? Wow. Like, you know, it's a privilege, like the value I'm able to add to my community. That's what business does. It adds value to community. In San Francisco, our community has been pushed out of San Francisco. So when y'all come here, y'all like, where's Black people? We've been pushed out. We further and further past that bridge. Right. But I'm like, I ain't moving. Number one, my business is here, so I gotta be here. So I gotta make that money because I'm gonna be right in San Francisco. I ain't moving nowhere. Like, you know, so yeah.
Why do I have to go after all Black people and Black culture are certainly to be celebrated. Right. Obviously, what we want is for things like Black to not have for white not to have transactional value when it comes to marketplace things, but we don't want to lose our Blackness. The world doesn't want us to lose our Blackness. We also need businesses that are diversified. We need to extend well beyond restaurants, well beyond personal services. We need to be in finance. We need to be in all types of industries. We also, and then here I wanted to point this out too, because we had the conversation around cannabis, and what I thought was landmark yesterday, we had a president of the United States do a federal pardon for all convictions of marijuana possession. And a commitment to pursue getting marijuana off of Schedule 1 restriction. But there's irony, because this is also the same person who orchestrated the crime bill that led to mass incarceration. But you know, that with that irony, you know, damn it, why am I the dismal person? But I celebrate Biden for that, because we want change. We want to have space for people to be able to do better and do good. Biden is also the person that, by executive order, made all federal agencies consider race and race equity in what they do. That's transformative, right? We haven't really seen that in other presidents. So we should critique him, we should hold his feet to the fire, but we should also celebrate victories. And all these people on stage are victories.
And I can assure you, we will end on a high note, pun intended. So, if there's questions from the audience, I see Brittany up here. We probably have time for one or two quick questions. One or two quick questions from the audience before we close. Brittany, I see you.
Thank you. One, I just want to say congratulations. I'm just so proud of y'all, and nobody has poured that into you today. Congratulations. You are. So one thing that I really heard and also just get from the feed from Pinky is authenticity. And really, when you were talking about, you know, the cultural wealth and value add of Black culture, in my mind, it's American culture. You know, what is marketed to the world as American food or American style or whatever else is a watered down version of what we started. Like, one of my favorite t-shirts is ghetto until proven fashionable, because a lot of fashion starts with us, and then, you know, it's talking. Anyways, my question is, to your point around trademarking or ownership, like, can you guys give any type of practical advice to the audience around ensuring that, you know, as we are creating, that we're also owning and receiving the credit for what we're creating?
So I'll go first. So I have this motto: own the business and buy the building. Own the business and buy the building. So I have a 70-30 ownership to lease ratio in Slutty Vegan. I like to purchase the property and then put the business in it, because God forbid something ever happened to Slutty Vegan, I still own the dirt. And what that does for me is I'll always have equity inside of that atmosphere, and there will never be a rainy day, because I'm setting myself up for that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, when we talk about trademarks, when I first started Slutty Vegan, I got every single website, I got every single thing on my item trademarked, because I was thinking big business. I was not making that much money when I first started. I had about 4 people the first week, but I knew that I was going to be building a $1 billion brand. So I had to start moving like a $1 billion brand. So what that meant is I had to get my trademarks, and not just American trademarks. I got overseas trademarks. You go to China, you gonna see me. You go to England, you gonna see me. Jamaica, you gonna see me there too. But it was necessary for me to do that, because when you stay ready, you ain't never gotta get ready. And when we want to get even more practical, there are 2 people that are so important in business, and I think that a lot of us probably should know this. It's an attorney and a really good accountant. An attorney will make sure that your ass do not get sued. And an accountant will make sure that your books are clean so that the IRS don't come after you. Because I've been there, done that, and it's not a fun game to play. So hopefully that was helpful. But own the business, buy the building is my best advice I could give you.
Very good. Thank you.
Dr. Keith, please.
I was waiting for everybody to clap. So what Pinky did when she started a business is exactly what I did for Village Market. Started Village Market, the next day I started the process for trademarking. I had this concept support as a verb, started the process for trademarking. And then one really amazing thing happened, I think it was 2017. I knew that there would come a time that I would focus heavily on programming for Black businesses, but I knew that my target audience would be corporations. So I went ahead and got my nonprofit organization. So in the time when the world started caring about Black people and figuring out, oh, we need to give money to Black people, I was an organization that was ready. I had all my business certifications. I had everything that I needed. So I raised well over about $5-6 million within a span of about 2 months. And my organization was ready for that. My employees were ready for it. We were ready for scale. So the conversation today is make sure that your operations are tight so you can scale. The attorney is a big expense. It is the most costly thing that you would ever do to ensure that you can stand 5 to 6 years later. I suggest getting 2 accountants, well actually 3. I think you should have an accountant that look at your payroll, an accountant that looks at your overall operations, and then that bookkeeper that's helping you understand what's going on and where your money is going. I have a meeting with my bookkeepers across, I have 3 companies every week. I meet with my CFO once a month, or if there's an emergency. And my 2 CPAs, I meet with them quarterly. But that bookkeeper and I have a constant conversation because I follow the money. Because as you grow, and as you start being booked for talent, you can get distracted. And so what I really want entrepreneurs to understand is when you start getting distracted, that is when mistakes happen. And you need to catch those things on the front end. You can hire good people. Number 1, entrepreneurs, please hire good people. And make sure that you treat people well. Make sure that you're not grandfathering these oppressive systems, these very toxic work cultures. Make sure that you are not the culprit for that. I ensure that my employees know that I literally cannot do this work without them every day. They get gratitude the same way I throw gratitude to God every day. My team every morning receives a very personal message from me. So then thank you for letting me see this journey through. Thank you for bringing your best of yourself to this team every single day. And let me know if there's any way that I can empower you more to be your best self. Please make time for that.
It's so important what they said. Like, I'll be super vulnerable and honest. Like, I didn't have an accountant, bookkeeper for a long time. That cost me thousands. And like the IRS in the state of California, they'll smell when you got money. They never call me. They will go be like, oh, she got some money now. And yes, it will cost you. They will shut down your business. Like, I didn't even know it was accountant and a bookkeeper was 2 different things. So like I'm just now getting to that point, and that's like some of the things that my daughter helped me with. She's like, Mom, and I'm like, dude, I pay you to do this. It's like running a business is not easy. Like y'all see on Instagram, you know, it's very rewarding, but it's a lot of moving parts, and you gotta be on your stuff, like, because it will cost you. Like I've had a lot of high price mistakes that, you know, now like. You know, Pinky gave everybody LLCs, and I was like, that's dope. I don't know what the laws is in Georgia. In California, you gotta have that $800 every year. Like, you know, California taxes is different, so yeah.
Thank you. So we have 4 minutes left. Utuma, I'm gonna ask you to get to the question, limit your context, but if you can ask your question so we can respond.
My question is, my question is, can you guys collaborate and get something on 3rd Street in the baby?
Can we do a pop-up at the restaurant?
Come on.
Yes.
Don't put y'all got that over. Y'all got that?
Okay, we
Okay. So in the time that we have left, like I said, I'm gonna
Just make sure, because there's a lot of commitments being made up here. Because you know, I'm like keeping all the receipts in here, like, and I'm still going back to that.
it's in the atmosphere, and we meet the checklist. Baby on this point is a food desert, is a vegan desert, all the things. So yeah,
And
and
it's a Black Taste Center, so.
And we got a little piece of change.
Let me tell you, I did a pop-up in Oakland, because Oakland is 20 minutes away from here, right? I did So I did a pop-up in Oakland, and I literally had probably like 1,000 people that came out off one Instagram post. So I know that there is an audience for my little small black owned business. So we are coming, as long as y'all can help us on the location. We will be here.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes left, and I wanna close on that high note. And I will start with Derek and kind of ping pong, Derek, Tiffany, Pinky. Well, let's close with Pinky, because you got that energy. And Dr. Key. Black business and Black women entrepreneurs are the fastest growing entrepreneurs in this country. We continue to fuel this economy. So what excites you? And as you think about that fact, what are you hopeful for?
That's me.
What are you hopeful for? For everyone.
I mean, yeah, I hear that number a lot, but we the fastest growing business, but like what I would love to know is like how many of us is actually successful? Like it's very different with opening a business and actually being successful and running a great business. You know, we also are the least funded businesses too. We like at 1.3% or something like that.
Leave the dismal to Derek. What you
But yeah, no, I'm very hopeful. I hope that I'm proof. I hope that I'm a blueprint. I hope that it can be done. You know, I'm a mother. I started this when my child was like in middle school, and it didn't get off the floor until she graduated college. So, you know, yeah, I'm very hopeful. But yeah, black business, like we gotta, like I work with a lot of immigrant communities and they doing it. Like I want that for my people so bad. I'm hopeful for it. You know, they don't even speak English. They don't even have to. You know, but just running a good business and showing up for your business is important. It's very possible, and that's how I think as Black people that we can achieve the American dream is through entrepreneurship. So I'm very hopeful.
You're right about the dismal.
Okay, we're gonna ask you what you want then.
So there's push and pull. Some people are pushed into business because they don't have other opportunities, other chances. Some people are pulled because of their passion. So we need to put numbers in context. We also know that when we think about things like fastest growth, if we start with 1% and add another percent, that's 100% growth. If you start at 99% and add another percent, that's a 1% growth. So where we start, the distribution skews that number. But here's the point. We referenced the IRS earlier. We know the IRS disproportionately audits Black people. All day. Disproportionately audits Black people. We need the spirit that's here, the innovation that's here. We need that I don't care, I'm gonna overcome. But we also need that structural work so they don't have to work as hard. We also need that structural work because we don't ask at what cost. What is the cost for working twice as hard to get by? Many of us lost a lot of people for working twice as hard to get by. So let's put all this in context, and let's also point out that what we have up on stage is success. What we don't have up stage is all those people that did work hard and didn't achieve. So I'm going to end with the positive thing of saying we can do both. We can change structures and we can put forth that individual effort to make sure we're successful.
I'm very hopeful about what's going on. As you can see, fellas, the ladies are running everything. We got 4 ladies in the stage. We got women in the audience that's pushing the envelope. We got to catch up. I'm just being real. But at the end of the day, is that the ladies said it best. Take care of your employees, get you an accounting, know your business, read, study, learn, don't give up, stay focused, keep your business to yourself, move forward, and everything is going to pan out for you exactly the way you want it to be. And at the end of the day, you got to know one thing, is that you got to believe in yourself. Forget what everybody else thinks of you. Believe in yourself. Shine don't care what nobody has to say about it. They say Shine is arrogant. I don't care. I'm convinced that I can do anything that I say I'm going to do. And people don't like that because they don't know me, they don't understand me. And so you need to take that same attitude. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, It's either all of us or none of us. And we got to stay focused on the path that's ahead of us. And with your dreams to own your own business, if it's your dream to have it, you know what I'm saying, a $1 billion business, I'm trying to catch up to these ladies right now. They talking about billions, I'm still in the hundreds. $100, not thousands. I got all the relationships in the world. They ain't made no 100 million yet. So I always say this, black and brown, we have to take back the town. We have to stay focused. We have to always push forward. And we got to believe in ourselves. And we got to teach the younger generation. I'm going to preach that because they are the future. Again, they are the future.
So I'll be brief. You know what? I'm on my Barack Obama every day. I believe so much in hope. I think hope is what keeps me going when I'm extremely tired. Hope is one thing that we always have been able to defer to. When we call it resiliency, I know it's hope. It's that burning underbelly that there is something very much so possible that we can experience. But what keeps me going and what I do know to be true, that the only way that we can experience and actualize hope is we lean on each other. That collectively we must move the needle. Collectively we must support each other. Collectively we must agitate the narrative. Collectively we must love Black joy and Black gifts and Black aspirations and Black innovation and Black prosperity. That's what I believe in. That is what I hope that you all believe in as well.
One thing that we all got in common in this room is that is a dog right there. I mean, not that you one thing that we all have in common is that one day we will become somebody's ancestor. What do I mean when I say that? We will leave a legacy, whether good, bad, or indifferent, that will speak to the idea that we left behind. So what idea are we going to leave behind? Is it the idea that I've been able to create something and create opportunities for other people? Or did I leave nothing behind and nothing to provide a space for people to be able to have equitable opportunities? The best feeling in the world for me as a Black woman is to know that my mother and my father still have life and breath in their body, to see their child, their offspring, make it to a level that they could never even imagine. Do you know how big that is? So they get to live through me. So to be able to do this in a way that I've never even seen with my own two eyes, it lets me know that I'm creating a space for other Black women around the world to run and own their own detail shops, to lead their PR firms, to operate and build billion-dollar restaurants, to be able to move the needle and to create organizations that people will talk about outside and inside of the classroom in a way that you'll hear it and see it in textbooks. So when you ask what I'm hopeful about, I am hopeful about the idea of more Pinky Coles in the world. That's right. That may be raw on the tongue, right? But authentic and organic and real and moving the needle when it comes to change. And inspiring little girls, little boys, and little dogs. That you can literally do what it is that you desire without any limitations. How you see me here is how you see me everywhere. And I'm doing it confidently as a Black woman without restrictions. And either you gonna like me or you ain't gonna like me, but you're gonna respect me. And you're gonna understand that what I'm building, it ain't just for me. It's for everybody that's looking and responding and supporting and believing in me. Yes.
And with that, let's give it up for the fire panel.
a little bit of coffee for folks who drink it, just a little bit. You may have to share one cup. I was just thinking too, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the hope and the dream of the slave. So again, thank you so much. In the words of Maya Angelou and what was left with us, thank you again to our wonderful panel. And next up is Brittany and first. Brittany and Alicia Modestino and Carrie Malferry Lane. Close, not right there.
Davis, if I may. I also forgot to mention for more intimate focus for our entrepreneurs, Dr. Key will be facilitating a workshop this afternoon as well at Pier 1 for those who want more detail.
Tiffany, the picture, photo, come on, Tiffany. Dr. Sy, Mr. Derek. Get up there, Cheryl, get up there. Thank you so much. Excellent.
One last.
This is just Facebook Live. I think they're recording back there. There we go.
Here we go, y'all.
Actually,
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Say it loud.
I want to tell you, kids need, you know, this is that's the real, that's the real. How's your son?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Don't make me start singing because I do love karaoke. Good morning. What's your song? I want to dance with somebody. and then square bids for round two. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this next panel. I know we're all buzzing and filled with so much energy and joy after that last conversation with those amazing entrepreneurs and visionaries. And so I just want to start off by thanking them once again for that conversation. We really enjoyed hearing from our local stakeholders and experts, as well as the work of Dr. Hamilton and Pinky Cole. So, my name is Brittany Chiquata. I'm the Director of Economic Rights at the Human Rights Commission. And I'm very excited to be in conversation today with these amazing practitioners who are going to share their both real world and institutional expertise around this conversation on youth investment, youth talent development, youth economic development. So for one, I wanted to start by thanking Director Davis and my colleagues who work on Opportunities for All, and that would be Sarah Williams, who's in the back there, Terry Jones, Danielle Glover, and Nicole Elmore. So for folks who may not be familiar, Opportunities for All is a youth development program here in San Francisco that provides 6-week internships during the summer to transitional age youth. And I don't know, for the folks who were here yesterday, you might have heard the story that the seed for this program started with some community violence. And Director Davis and some other community leaders met to start talking about what investments we need to be making in our young people to give them opportunities and show them different pathways for their future. You know, a lot of times we don't always know that life is bigger than the block. We might not ever leave our neighborhood, much less our city and state, and see what else is out there for us. And so Opportunities for All was created to be both a youth pathway to employment, an opportunity for networking, kind of touching on what Pinky and others were saying around developing those networks and expanding who we have access to. And also, you know, as a lot of people say, to keep kids out of trouble. But we know that keeping kids out of trouble is not a strategy for economic development, for economic mobility. It really has to be an interpersonal investment. And so that's what I'm excited to talk with you all about today and learn more about the work that you're doing and share it with our guests here. So I'll start right here. I have Alicia Sasser Modestino, who's an economist and researcher at Northeastern University. Okay. Carrie Maltzby-Lute, who's the director for the Center for Transformative Action at Mills College. And Grieve Chella, who's the director of research at the Institute on Race, Power, and Political Economy. Thank you all for being here. So, I want to start by talking with you all about your entrance into this conversation, because as I said, we're discussing the necessary components of equitable youth and talent infrastructure development. So that's everything from a jobs guarantee and just understanding and incorporating the inherent value that youth bring to our economy. So can you all talk about, you know, how it's not just about that keeping that individual inside or off the street, it's about the health of that child, the exposure of that child, and really how that feeds into our collective well-being?
Sure, I'll start off. First of all, thank you so much to Cheryl and Alvi for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm honored and humbled to be in this room. Like, the energy the last 2 days has been absolutely incredible, and it's just invigorated the work I do. And my policy partner in the city of Boston, Rashad Cope, always reminds me to center the why of why we do this work. And as a researcher, you know, sometimes you're crunching the numbers and the why slips away from you. So thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. Speaking about the holistic nature of this, right? And I think you really touched on something around what we're really trying to center around this work is changing the narrative around what youth employment is, particularly in low-income communities and for Black and brown youth. And the way I came into this this space was actually, I had been a senior economist at the Federal Reserve Bank in Boston. I had done a report on youth employment trends and had seen that over the last several decades, fewer and fewer young people were in the workplace, particularly teenagers aged 16 to 19. And there were a variety of different factors we looked at. You know, there's like technology, there's no more Blockbuster video store, we all stream our videos, right? Lots of teenage jobs have kind of been replaced with technology, even those automated checkout lanes. Or even just adults, right? Like we've had 2 jobless recoveries, and so adults are taking a lot of the jobs that young people used to have and waitressing and things like that. But when I started casting around for solutions, there were not very many solutions out there, but what I did stumble across was the work that the city of Boston and a bunch of community-based organizations were doing to place young people into jobs. And what struck me so much was it really addressed the disparity in terms of who gets a job as a young person, right? So even though we've seen this decline over time, it's still the case for the most part, you know, that white middle-class kids can find employment, and that's because they have lots of networks and resources in their parents who can find them a job. They face very little discrimination, if any, in the labor market, except, you know, employers are like, oh, we don't want kids on the phone all the time. And they live in places, right, where it's easy to get to the kinds of jobs that they can do. And so what the city of Boston was doing was playing this really instrumental brokering role and had done it for decades under the Walsh administration, the Menino administration, going back for many, many years. And what was really interesting was over the last 2 decades, that work has really, the narrative has changed. So initially, this was a program that was in response to violence that started in the late 80s, early 90s in Boston. It was really to keep the kids off the street, to warehouse them. And over time, it has really become a pathway, a way to provide meaningful employment experiences for young people, and meaningful experiences that lead them to a path either into a career directly after high school or into college, or even combining those things. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about what the research evidence says, but, and so I began that journey with them 8 years ago to be their third-party evaluator and to help document the impacts of this program. And so some of the things we've found over the last several years is that the program, yes, reduces violent crime by 30%. And this is bulletproof kinds of studies. There's more kids who need a job than positions that we have, so we randomly assign these positions using a lottery. And so we have a very bulletproof control group that shows us what's going to happen to young people who do not get these employment experiences. So big reductions in violent crime. But building on top of that, we also see an increase in high school graduation rates, on-time high school graduation rates, or even eventually graduating from high school. And this really stems directly from their work experience. So in all of this, we bring out the youth voice in all the work that we do. And so, for example, every time I run a focus group, I ask them, what'd you learn this summer? And they all say, man, if you're gonna show up 5 minutes late to work, you may as well not show up at all. And this is a revelation, because you do not learn how to show up on time in school. You will get time and time again, someone will write you a note, you get many, many chances, eventually you could get suspended, but probably not likely. So where they're learning these good work habits, right, and these motivations is in the workplace. And they bring that back to them, because in the year after participating in the program, their attendance rate increases. And then when their attendance rate increases, their course failures drop. So if you show up every day and you don't fail, oh my God, you graduate. It's not rocket science, right? We know how to make it happen. But it stems from that work experience. And then you layer on top of that more of those kinds of experiences that get them into particular kinds of jobs.
And I feel like you're alluding to a lot of kind of the persistent racialized wealth disparities that we see in the U.S. and the intersection between that work experience and exposure and how that informs how we show up in other parts of our lives, right? And so I wanted to jump to Grieve because I know you have an expansive global economic perspective, but I want you to kind of talk to your work and research around the concept of stratification economics and kind of the through thread to uplifting economic rights policies as solutions to what Alicia is describing.
Thanks, Brittany, for that question, and thanks, Alicia. Learned a lot from your submission. Everybody's saying gratitude, so gratitude to the San Francisco Human Rights Commission for having us here. Gratitude to my friends, my director, Derek, whom I've learned a lot from.
Gratitude to you for joining us in this time.
Yes.
Time zone. We got you in this time zone.
That's true. Like I traveled all the way from Zagreb. I think it's probably like 1 a.m. Saturday. So yeah. So anyways, so that's an important question, and I think most of what we've heard today, what we heard yesterday, what Alicia just so eloquently articulated here about racial disparities, you see them everywhere. You see them in wealth, you see them in business ownership, you see them in, Derek talked about the IRS. Why is it that the IRS disproportionately targets black folk? And I mean, from a rational point of view, that doesn't make any sense because, poverty levels are high, income levels are lower in that community, wealth levels are low in that community, but why disproportionately target them and not target the folks who have the money? So essentially, what stratification economics is trying to do is to make sense of all these group-based inequalities, group-based disparities, whether they be race, whether they be gender, whether they be sexual orientation, whether they be immigrant status, whether they be nationality, whether they be countries. We're trying to understand why is it that these group-based disparities emerge in the first place, and why do they persist? That's essentially what we're trying to understand. Right, and what we find in this framework is why do they persist, even in the absence, even in the context of where folks are told, if you want to better yourself, go get an education, right? If you want to better yourself, go to school. But what we find in the evidence, what we see in the data is that these group-based disparities, the racial wealth gap gets bigger as you go up the socioeconomic status. As you get more education, the gaps get bigger. Right, so what's going on here, right? We're all told that the solution is you pull yourself by your bootstraps, go to school, get an education, and then this gap will disappear. But these gaps persist and they get bigger, right? And this is the contribution of stratification economics, really allowing us to understand that identity itself has transactional value. Identity can be an asset, right? We've been acknowledging ancestors in this particular session. And stratification economics has ancestors who've made incredible contributions to the field, who point out this idea, this novel idea, this sort of obvious idea when you think about it, that identity can be an asset or can be a debt, given the political economic context. If you're white, identity is an asset. If you're a man, that sort of identity is an asset, right? In the IRS example, right, being black is debt. It's sort of a cost, it's a constraint on you, right? So essentially, this is what stratification economics is doing. And one really important article, right, I don't want to get into professor mode and ascribe and so suggest reading, but one really important article that's been incredibly influential to Derek and I, and other colleagues who are involved in this work, is a 1993 classic article by the critical race theorist Cheryl Harris. And she wrote a paper called Whiteness as Property, right? And that piece really articulates in a way that I cannot articulate essentially what stratification economics is trying to do, right? And Brittany, you talk about inclusive economic rights, and what we are proposing at the Institute is we want a world, right? We want to go towards a moral political economy, a world where that sort of link between identity and outcomes is sort of cut, right? We cut that Gordian knot between your identity should not determine your lot in life. Now, like Derek said, we're not arguing for sort of the disappearance of identity, right? There's value, aesthetic value to being a black person. There's aesthetic value to being, a Native American. There's aesthetic value to being a Jamaican living in Queens or wherever, right? There's aesthetic value in those things, but what we are calling for is that identity should not have transactional value. Right? Your identity should not map onto outcomes. Your identity should not determine whether, as a young person, you get into an internship program, right? Which is incredibly powerful. I mean, getting an internship program means you're learning, you're applying certain skills, that's investment that will pay off in the long run, right? So what we want is to create a world where your identity doesn't have transactional value, to create a world where everybody has a baseline set of resources that enables them to live full, fulfilled lives of agency, right? We had a conversation earlier about entrepreneurship. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you should be an entrepreneur, right? Your race or your gender shouldn't be the thing that limits you from becoming an entrepreneur. If you're a movie director, you should be a movie director, right? So essentially what we want to do with inclusive economic rights is to create this political economy where everybody has a chance in life. Everybody has a chance to fully self-actualize themselves, right? And so that's essentially our contribution to stratification economics.
Thank you. And I think what you're saying is reminding me, as far as identity and its transactional value, it's reminding me of the Combahee River Collective, which was a group of Black feminists in the 70s that included Audre Lorde, and they were the initial folks who coined the term identity politics. Now that's been undermined and bastardized by a lot of different folks, but I think that, the thread there was that recognizing what I bring to the table because of my experiences as an asset, not something to create additional barriers. And so, Carrie, I'm hoping that you can jump in and talk about, a lot of the work that you're doing at Mills College and more broadly, how we might think about strategically building pathways that are holistic, that are equitable, that center community experiences, and see, as Director Davis has said a number of times, the value of that cultural wealth, and that rewards it, and doesn't just capitalize off of it, as Pinky said, counting the views from this woman with 100 followers and making millions without compensating for her contributions.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I want to start off with expressing gratitude as well. I feel like the gratitude has been a running theme in my life more recently since reading a book called Braiding Sweetgrass. It's about indigenous knowledge, learning from plants, and just the power of having reciprocity and gratitude for everything we do. So I'm grateful for Dr. Davis, grateful for you, Brittany, grateful for you, Alicia, for inviting me here as well, and grateful for all of you for attending these very important conversations. It's been so, these conversations have been so relevant. Alicia and I attended yesterday and just had a wonderful experience just learning about reparations and learning about, all these wonderful emergent models for developing our community. So in gratitude, I come to you from East Oakland, and a lot about pathways and youth empowerment, especially as East Oakland, just like San Francisco, has been going through so much gentrification issues surrounding displacement, and thinking about how can we ensure that our communities are getting better and beautified, but at the same time retaining the culture and the people that have been there, long-standing residents forever, that made it what it is. And so those are some of the things that are keeping me up. And my work at Mills College, which is actually now Mills College at Northeastern University, which is how I'm connected now.
It's still hard. It doesn't roll off the tongue.
It's hard for me too. I'm an alum from there, so it's really hard. But so my lens is one that I'm a professor of practice. I teach marketing at Mills College, and my focus is on experiential learning. I've been doing that work for a while now, and I've also top programs at Merritt College. Any Merritt College folks? No, Peralta Community College District people? Yes. All right, very important pathways when we think about, our youth and those folks that have less access, wonderful starting points. And so I've done programmatic work at Merritt College within their career technology education department, trying to infuse entrepreneurship into some programs that aren't traditionally entrepreneurial, like nursing, landscape, horticulture. How can we think about not only pathways into jobs, but pathways into businesses? And so that was my first entry point into youth development work. And then from there, moving into, my work at Mills College now at Northeastern University, it's centered around this idea that applied learning is some of the best learning that you can take. That's experiential learning. What it means is it's basically project-based learning. So I take real organizations, businesses in the community, and I have students work on those organizations, developing marketing plans for them. So students come out of that experience with experience being a consultant, right, to a client. They're working in teams. They're failing. They're, they're just doing real work. And the power of it is we're leveraging that. So we're helping these, smaller businesses, organizations that prioritize Black businesses by partnering with Project Runway, ICA Fund Good Jobs, ESO Ventures, organizations that are committed to Black businesses. And so those are the businesses that we're working with and helping them with their marketing strategy support. So it's been, just phenomenal seeing the outcomes from that. So students go on, they put it on their resume, they put it on LinkedIn. I'm talking to alums every day, so I really see myself as a connector to talent. And the exciting thing about, Mills College, I know it's still new and fresh, but the opportunity that I see now with the merging with Northeastern University is around research, industry, and experiential learning, which is something that Northeastern is really known for. So when we think about W.E.B. Du Bois and his focus on liberal arts, like the whole person, that doesn't go away. We can have both W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, which was all about industry. We're like their baby. They would have baby, right? Yes. So, we can have both. And so,
But Carrie, I want to sit here with you for a second because you spoke to being in East Oakland, and there definitely is a shared narrative being from San Francisco and how rapidly we have been invisibilized and kind of erased from the city despite the cultural cachet that we have contributed for generations, despite the first Black Studies department being founded here in San Francisco State, despite the Human Rights Commission being created in 1964 as a response to the sit-ins and the protests that were happening here. The height of the civil rights movement was absolutely at San Francisco City Hall's doorstep as well. Yet, when you go out into community, we are so invisibilized. You wouldn't know that Black folks did anything but break into cars if you were not from San Francisco and didn't have relationships. And so I really want to sit here with you and open it to all of our panelists, but talk about how we work with communities when we're in communities that are rapidly changing. How do we minimize displacement and erasure when we're, bringing things to communities to improve them?
It's a really good question. I think Carrie and I are actually working on this together, so I think we can share our insights that we've been working on. One of the things that Northeastern's known for in Boston is working in the backyard. So we're not Harvard, we're not MIT. We call them the other universities across the river.
They don't even call themselves, I went to the school in Boston when you meet someone from Harvard.
So if you ask City of Boston, or if you ask the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, who do you want to work with? If it's not a funding thing, they'll say Northeastern, because we have worked with the Boston Police Department, we have worked with the Office of Workforce Development, we have worked with the Boston Public Health Commission for years, for decades, because we stick with them through the entire cycle of whatever it is to solve the public problem, because we live and we work there in the backyard. And so that's kind of the iteration that I've been doing with City of Boston, where we don't just fly in and study about people, right? We don't just extract data. We don't tell them what the solutions are, right? The model that we have been working with is in partnership, in these research practice partnerships that are decades in the making, where we co-create not just like the data and things like that, but the question, like what is the question that they actually need to have answered, right? Not just what I think as an academic is important. And then even interpreting, you know, what comes out of that effort. A lot of times, right, economists can collect a lot of data and we can come up with a wrong answer, to be honest, if you don't know how things are working on the ground. Like City of Boston has saved my ass a lot of times from making really dumb conclusions because I don't understand how the program's operating or how the community is working. And then helping them design a solution and then sticking around to see if it works, right? We don't just write that little paragraph at the end of the paper, and now I think you should do this, and then fly off, right? Like we stick around and we have helped them evaluate that solution and then reiterate on it. So, you know, an example of this is even like who gets these jobs in Boston, right? And we uncovered in the City of Boston, even though there's multiple rounds of random assignment, you might think that's super fair. You know, who signs up first for these jobs? It's white exam school kids from the prestigious high schools. So if you have multiple rounds of random assignment, you have a disparity at the end of the day of who gets those jobs. Right, because there's limitations on how many jobs there are. So we showed City of Boston this and they were horrified. And we worked with them and I wrote an algorithm so we could make sure that we reserved enough spaces, right? So that we would equitably distribute these opportunities. And then, and now we're sticking with them again. We're using all this research evidence like we did during COVID to get more resources into the program and to make sure that the opportunities are going to the right folks. So that kind of success that we had during COVID, where we got Mayor Walsh to put an extra $4 million of CARES Act funding into the program and save it during COVID, where other programs had shut down. We saved 10,000 young people's jobs during COVID. Those kinds of wins were the kinds of, yeah, it was amazing. Those kinds of, and he committed to not only employing the same number of youth, but at the same number of hours and the same rate of pay, because half of our kids pay a household bill with their summer jobs earnings. But we had the data to show that, right? And that helped the community preserve those jobs. So when we acquired, merged, whatever, with Mills, I went to the provost and I said, we could do this in Oakland. We can do this kind of work there. And we can do it authentically like no other university can because we have faculty at Mills who have all of those community connections. I don't understand, I don't know the context in Oakland. I would never presume to fly in and be like, and this is how you should run your summer jobs program, right? But Carrie does.
You're speaking to that important technological aspect. And I'm wondering if you can kind of speak to that practice too that you're experiencing in Oakland.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna pass it to Carrie and say, and so now we're working in partnership together to develop these kinds of initiatives at Mills College in the fundamental connections that she already has, including a summer youth program that will have operating both at the Boston program, but also at the Mills campus as well.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about the work that Alicia's done with summer youth employment and the data that, you know, she's created over time and reviewed to just make things better. You know, one of the important things is to think about what are those industries that are most lucrative, that are industries of the future. So we're thinking about when we design a summer youth employment program, climate tech. How are we looking at, you know, industries, again, that are gonna lead to well-paying jobs over in, you know, high-road careers, as well as how are we gonna connect with these organizations that are already on the ground doing a lot of the work? Because we can't deny there's a number of summer programs. There are probably people in here right now that are running summer youth employment programs, and so connecting with you all and how can, you know, we build off of some of the amazing work that you're doing. So that's gonna be important, as well as connecting into community colleges and accessing folks that, you know, they already have learn to earn programs, and so how can we connect with them, build off that so students are actually getting college credits while they're learning and then while we're, you know, additionally earning for them. So those are just, yeah, just one example of the excitement, you know, the initiatives that we're gonna be working on together and why this is, yeah, great partnership.
Thank you both. Grieve, do you want to jump in at all about the the field work and just the experiences or perspective you might have on centering and working with community or with the most impacted communities when designing these programs.
Yeah, that's an important question. I sort of say I'm learning so much. They're doing fascinating work, and I think the lesson from their work is essentially that these demonstrations, or one can call them that are happening in different parts of the country, the ones that you articulate in Massachusetts. I think that, like we always say at the Institute, the North Star is for these kinds of programs to really be like, publicly funded, publicly guaranteed. Right? All young people should have a choice of a job and job experience when they leave high school, right? And that's just, I mean, as the evidence is showing, that's just sets you up for the future, right? Those jobs programs, if they're publicly guaranteed, should have an eye to the future, what the industries of the future will look like, climate tech, robotics, whatever it might be, right? The things that you can't get in school, but the things that you really need to survive in the workplace, right? So I think that's fascinating stuff. In terms of centering communities that have been left behind, I think this is essentially the basis of our inclusive economic rights framework, right? And we call it inclusive. One would say, is it oxymoronic to say inclusive and then economic rights? Because rights should be guaranteed to all, right? But essentially, we are very thoughtful about that, because we've learned from history, again, this stratification economics about the weaponization of identity. We've learned from history that in periods where economic opportunities have been expanded for all, in quotation marks, certain groups have been left out, right? And that is why we have to be intentionally and purposefully inclusive, right? So we have to include, in expanding opportunities, be they youth training programs, youth job guarantees, guaranteed income, whatever it might be, that we should always be intentional about being inclusive, right? Something as revolutionary as the Social Security Act of the 1930s left out certain groups, right? By design, by implementation, certain groups were left out, and by management, certain groups were left out. But what we are trying to articulate at the Institute is that when we want to expand economic opportunities, when we want to empower people, we should do it in a way that's purposefully inclusive. We should have an eye to make sure the program is anti-racist, it's anti-sexist, it's inclusive of identity certification.
Thank you, absolutely. And with that eye towards the future, I mean, San Francisco, Oakland, I'm sure Boston, so many cities nationwide and globally are experiencing workforce shortages as a result of many pressures from the pandemic. So be that the Great Resignation, be that remote working and how that's kind of transformed what our business cores look like, or be it having at-home requirements, so caretaking responsibilities either for our children or for our elders. And so, Alicia, you were touching on this a bit earlier, but I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about the opportunities that policymakers and business leaders are missing when it comes to analyzing that supply and demand data, and then just the rising share of the labor force that young people make up, and how we can really start building strong pipelines into these diverse industries.
Absolutely. I think one of the exciting things that's happening out of the pandemic is that we were able to experiment a lot with these programs. And so we become aware that it's not youth workforce development, it's youth development, right? And we need to be much more intentional about that and giving young people lots of different opportunities on their journey as they move through high school and graduate and move out into the world. And so a couple of the things going on in Boston during the pandemic, one of the ways we could save so many jobs, even when everything was shut down, is we created some virtual kinds of options. So one of those was a Learn and Earn program where we paid for young people to take community college courses. But we paid the course and we paid them for their time taking the course. So you wouldn't have to choose between having a job and earning money in the summer. Remember, I just told you like half of them pay the household bill with their summer earnings. So you wouldn't have to choose between earning.
Say that again, half of the youth.
Half of the youth are paying, and I'm talking they're paying rent, they're paying a utility, they're paying a cell phone bill. I wish my kids would pay their cell phone bill. And like that statistic has probably helped us more than anything in convincing the mayor's cabinet to put money into this program at a time when the city budget was hemorrhaging, right? In May 2020, cities did not know if they were gonna be able to keep the doors open, let alone put extra money into a program, right? So bringing that kind of research evidence, that's what I do. I try to make my city partners look good, right? And I bring these things to the table that I think they can use. But so Learn and Earn was one option. One of the things that we're really thinking about is to be more intentional about laddering these opportunities, right? I have seen how a 6-week summer program can be transformational for young people. I tell you about the focus groups and things like that I do. The last focus group, large one that I did right before pre-play was at Sanofi Genzyme. So Boston is very unusual in that we have a lot of real private sector placements. I'm talking, Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, Sanofi Genzyme, Mass General Hospital, right? We went to this end of the summer celebration, and there was a group of probably 20 young people who were reflecting on their experiences. And this one young Black man talked about how when he came to this summer internship, he was assigned to IT, and he thought it was really boring. And he said, but you know what? If I don't do my job in IT, nobody else can do their job. And then he went on to explain all this technical stuff that I don't even understand or remember. But it's obvious that this experience was transformational for him. He had not thought about a career in this way or in technology at all. And so those are the kinds of experiences that we want young people to have. But we want them to not just have one experience, we want to link that, right? So some of the new current thinking going into the future is, how can we move some of this into year-round employment, structured employment, or Learn and Earn programs? Or how could we even give young people a stipend for the entire year? Your income is guaranteed. We're just going to plug and play these different experiences that are going to lead you to a path at the end, right? Wouldn't it be great if I gave you a Learn and Earn course on healthcare medical technology, and then I gave you an internship in the summer working for one of the hospitals, right? And so that's what we're doing now, is being more intentional about laddering these things, badging them, so you get credit in high school for some of these experiences, and it's a digital badge they can bring to an employer that's recognized by City of Boston that says this young person had this experience, they have developed this set of skills, and being more intentional about how we can put kids on a path.
I just want to say something in addition to what Alicia said, which is fascinating, about the beauty of experimenting, even as a young person, right? Trying to figure out what it is you want to spend your life doing. And just thinking about what we lose out as a society from the fact that we're limiting those opportunities for young people to experiment in this way, right? It's just think about what we're losing out, and quantifiable stuff. All these brilliant young people who have not had a chance to find out exactly what they want to spend their life doing, right? And I think we ought to do it. It has to be public policy that says, try a bunch of things out and see what works.
Give people a chance to dream and think differently and have exposure to these different.
It's good for them, but it's good for society. Maybe who knows, but somebody who would have found a cure for cancer, right? Just never had the opportunity to just work in a hospital, like I said,
Scaling up, iterating, just having this startup mindset and just trying as many things as we can until we, land on something that feels right. So I love that. I think you were going to say something, Alicia.
I was just gonna riff off what you said. I think sometimes the best summer job that you have is a summer job you hated. And you were like, save me from law school. What am I? Or even just gives you a perspective on what you're doing the rest of the year, right? One of my sons worked in a pasta factory, no joke, on the South Shore, and he worked, he stood 10 hours a day, putting raviolis into boxes. And at the end of the summer, I was like, what's more fun? Working in the pasta factory or school? And he's like, school. But one of the things that you talked about was even how this benefits not just the young person, but their families and their communities, right? And so on top of this being a huge cash transfer program that flies under the radar and is super bipartisan, right? Who doesn't want young people working? it also benefits communities like City of Boston, New York, where you have a big program, Chicago. They cannot run their summer camps without summer youth employment to fill those positions. And so that's keeping the cost of childcare low for people in those cities and helping those communities be able to care for other younger children in the summer. And then the last thing I'll just say is, to be perfectly frank, in Boston, this is the only way that the private sector gets any diversity whatsoever. So when I was a senior economist at the Federal Reserve Bank, every person of color, except for one, was someone who came through the summer jobs program and then had a career at the Federal Reserve Bank for 30 years with a federal pension at the end of it, right? But this is something that private sector employers have come to the table with in Boston, not just because of the altruistic nature of it, but also because they have realized that they need to start much earlier, right, and be much more intentional about diversity.
Yes, it's definitely mutually beneficial. I'm sorry, we're gonna jump in.
Well, I was gonna jump in and just kind of also bring it back to like the business side, because your question was around like business leaders and what they can do as well. And there's a movement around STARS, right? Skilled through alternative routes. You know, this idea that you don't have to get all of your education at these traditional pathways in college. There's so many other ways, especially certificates. There's just so many programs that now can offer you wonderful skill sets that won't require you to take on the levels of debt and that will get you into some of those entry road jobs. And so just thinking about companies like Square, like Google, you're seeing that a lot in the tech world where they are dropping their degree requirements. And they're just going after folks that have the skill set. And so when I was working at Salesforce, some of the smartest people that I worked with came in through Year Up, came in through, other programs that just provided them with, some programming, coding experience. And so just, recognizing that that's also, companies dropping the degree requirements for certain roles can also help and really lead to equity gains that we're after, so.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this has been an ongoing conversation in the city of San Francisco around minimum qualification requirements and how, certain degrees or just the way that we word certain applications and the requirements that we have really limit the pool that we're able to even select from. So thank you for that. I wanted to, in our final minutes, to give members of the audience an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have. And I saw Dr. Scott's hand go up.
Thank you so much for everything you've shared. One of the things that I found that works for our young people and that worked in the past, and I'm a senior, but I came up during a time, way back when, I came up during a time where all schools taught home economics, life skills. When they took those life skills out of the schools, cultures, assurance, feeling good about yourself, knowing how to live on your own. More children are at home with parents because they don't know how to make it on their own. They don't know how to survive. We had life skills training, home economics, cooking, sewing, auto shop, machine shop, mechanics. We had wood shop, all of that.
All the shop.
And we knew how, but we knew how to work life. We felt good, we felt strong, no matter what. No matter what, budgeting, all of that. So along with giving our children this opportunity, we need to work hard with bringing back those skills. Our children stand out on the street, let a tire go flat, go steal another car instead of fixing the tire. No, but that's what happens. That is, I've talked to the children. I'm in the street. I live as a missionary. I'm serious. I lived in the streets in West Oakland where the Panther Party rose and fell, San Francisco, Fillmore, Hunters Point. They don't know how to change a tire. I had to show them. They didn't know how to put on. Yes, and then go get another car. But what we need to do is make them aware
hear you.
teach them,
Yeah.
train them, and even our young girls, our young ladies, the cooking, the sewing, all of that.
Everybody can cook and sew, let me
So-
just say that.
I
I want somebody to cook for me. Yes, Dr. Scott, go ahead, Lisa.
So one of the advantages of the Summer Youth Employment Program that's different from young people even just getting a job out in the private sector is it comes with programming that wraps around that young person, right? So it's structured in a couple different ways. One is to deliver some of those life skills, right? So not quite the cooking and cleaning, but certainly the life skills around understanding finances, understanding how to get another job, right? So it comes with, learning, practicing how to interview, how to put together a resume, how to even write or speak professionally and to work in teams. And we see that in all of our research evidence as well. It also, though, comes with working in your communities, because a lot of these are community-based organizations, so not just the summer camps, but other kinds of community-based organizations. And one of the things that was the huge standout for us on our survey is young people reporting that they feel more connected to their communities, right? And you see this because they're working every day with the families and the young people in their communities, and they feel good about themselves about that. So that's like one of the last things I would say as well, is that, even a couple of my own kids, you might think professors' kids must be super smart in school. Not all, but the self-worth that my boys got from their jobs then carried them through a lot of other challenges, whether it be in school or in other kinds of things. And so there is something that goes along with this. And in addition, the program also makes sure that your supervisor is a good mentor, right? And so we're even trying to extend some of those things into the other kinds of private sector jobs, because this summer is a little bit of a challenge. There's a strong summer youth employment market. Target's paying $20, $22 an hour. That is hard to compete with when your city job pays minimum wage, which is nothing to sneeze at, $15.50, but it's not the same. So how can we extend some of those supports to the young people who are in those other kinds of jobs to give them those kinds of life skills that you're talking about?
But another thing that I hear from both Dr. Scott's comment and question, as well as what you were saying about self-worth, is just this opportunity to help young people understand what they might not be exposed to, and that in turn makes them better advocates for their community, right? Because if we don't know what we're not getting, then and we live in a way where it's like, this is my normal, so this must be everyone's normal. I mean, that was my experience when I went from public school, through middle school to a private school, wealthy private school. I was like, oh, I didn't know people lived like this. And so, depending on where you grow up, you might know, but you don't know the disparities in wealth as far as our different experience.
I just want to add, Dr. Scott's comment is like an excellent comment. And one sees this trend even in the universities, right? This movement towards STEM, right? At the expense of humanities, right? Like this idea that we ought to invest, the idea is we should invest in our people to the extent that it's extractable in the marketplace, right? Which is a terrible way of doing things. That's the point I want to make. We have to rethink that we should invest in our young people just because. We invest in our young people so we can empower them, and not so that we shouldn't think of them as human capital to later be extracted. Right? You see this trend in many universities, especially the resource-constrained ones. The humanities departments are closing down, so people can't read Langston Hughes, for example. But they should just know how to program, and that's all. Right? So I think,
No, very true, and that's kind of what Junpa was saying yesterday about, moving away from good jobs versus bad jobs. Like, we need that diversity of industry, right?
I don't know if I saw any other hands go up. Yes, Ms. Diane Gray.
And then we will have to make this our last.
And this is our last, as Director Davis said.
Thank you all for the wonderful panel this morning and talking about youth development. I work with youth and getting them into college at 100% college prep. But what was just mentioned was mentoring, and the corporations, the agencies that you encourage to be a part of the program. How do you support them in mentoring those young people and setting that all up? Because that's truly, truly important. There have been situations in the past that some of my young people did not have that, and their workplaces were not ready to receive them and to support them and to mentor them. Because I think that's so important in this piece.
Yeah, that is hugely important. That's one of the reasons why we want to even be able to extend the program to provide that kind of support to other jobs that are going on around the city, because not every job is designed to develop a young person, right? So that target job, even though it pays a lot, super extractive, right? They're just going to try to get as many hours as they can, and that young person, especially right now when they're having a hard time hiring, they're not going to worry about are they going to develop the right skills or anything, right? But that is what we do. And so some of what the City of Boston does is provides training for the supervisors. It's required training. I mean, it's not long, it's a couple hours of training, but at least makes them mindful. We also have, it's called the Work-Based Learning Plan, something that the Department of Labor developed, but it's required for employers to fill it out. It's kind of like a performance review sort of thing, right? But it's requiring them to ask, like, what are the skills that this young person is learning, and how is that gonna match up to what's going on in the labor market in a very intentional way? And then, I run a survey every year where I'm surveying 10,000 young people, and part of what we ask them is, what was your supervisor like? Did they prepare you for the job? Did they tell you what was expected of you? Were you able to come to them with problems? Did they act as a mentor to you? And we kind of have a whole list of things with that, so that we can actually evaluate these supervisors. And there have been some employers who just either they're not designed to be mentoring young people, they're not good at, or some places that were just really bad, right? That were just abusive, not abusive, but just extractive, right? It just wasn't a good match. And if you're not a good match for the program, then you're no longer in the program. And but they're very intentional about that. And that's a huge piece of this is mentoring. We're learning more and more that mentoring piece is really what's driving a lot of these good impacts.
Thank you. So can I just do a rapid fire as we close to hear from each of you, 10 to 30 seconds on your hopeful vision as far as the collective impact of youth development investments?
Well, I guess I think we should take the learnings that Alicia and Kari just shared with us and try to scale them. Try to figure out movements. How can we make this sort of federal policy so that every young person has this kind of experience that's just been articulated here, right? I think that's the general idea. Every young person when they graduate high school has an option to go and figure out what they want to do in life, and that requires that they try out different things. Those things are there, those things pay a decent salary, right? And also this other sort of holistic approach, some of the evidence that Alicia shared about, what you earn as a young person on this job, half of it goes to supporting your larger family. So we kind of try to think about holistically how do we fix all the systemic issues. So that's my sort of hope.
My hope, it's big and it's also localized. I'm thinking about our earlier conversation surrounding development and displacement and that connection between youth empowerment and these pathways to displacement and how displacement disrupts the pathways. So my hope is that we are able to radically collaborate with organizations throughout that are doing work that's talking about housing, work that's talking about restorative economics and new ways of actually, being as far as our capitalistic structures, and that we can continue to have better pathways that are really transparent so kids and youth can tinker and fail and have the opportunity to experience a lot of different ways of being, have the mentorship that's needed, and that we can have our communities be beautiful and be thriving with people that look like us in them. And so it's not this, either or. So my vision is for thriving business corridors with small businesses that are Black and brown and young people running them and being the leaders that are growing our city. So that's what I hope to be true.
I'm going to start from the dismal and then get to the positive, because we're economists, that's what we do. I'm awfully positive as an economist up here, just for the record. Eric was making me look good. started doing this work, one of the reasons for the disparities in employment between Black and white youth was the fact that 50% of Black youth said they were looking for their first job. There's a huge disparity in terms of even getting into the labor market to start with. And that leads to persistent disparities down the road. So right now even, right over this summer, this was one of the best youth job markets we've seen in years, because employers have been desperate to hire people, right? And they suddenly rediscovered young people. They don't even worry about if they're on their phones or nothing, right? They're just like, you can wash dishes, or you can wait on tables, or you can take tickets, come on in, right? We got a job for you. Do you know what the unemployment rate was for 16 to 19-year-olds in August, which is like the height of the summer youth employment?
1.5%.
Nope. So for whites, it was 9%. Because young people are still, the last to be hired. For Black youth, it was 18%. Okay, it's twice. So my starting with the dismal is to say that these kinds of experiences that we're providing through the public sector are absolutely essential. And I'm so excited by what is going on in San Francisco, the additional funding that has been coming in as well to expand that program. It is essential good work that you all are doing here, and it needs to continue and it needs to expand. I think the thing that I'm most excited about is that now that we know a lot more about the impacts that these programs have, and we have now the intentionality behind it, my hope is that we can create career pathways where there's on-ramps and off-ramps for everybody, but especially for young people, right? So, if you might start off after high school not knowing exactly what you do, but you get into a job, great. But then we want to be able to provide you with the on-ramp back into training if you need to further yourself, or a community college course, or a skills-based kind of thing, right? And you might go off and do, another kind of job, right, in the career ladder. And then realize you need another piece of education, right? So we need to be building in these places for people to take time out when they need to. Sometimes you need to take time out to care for your family. Sometimes
You need to rest.
You need to rest. Sometimes, life throws you a curveball and you get chucked out of the labor market. But we need to make these on and off ramps seamless so that once we get a young person into the labor market and we get them on their way, we can make sure that there's many ways for them to go in different directions. And to keep themselves on a path to prosperity.
Beautifully said. Join me in thanking Alicia, Carrie, and Bridget for this conversation.
And thank you to Brittany Chiquata for moderating this. Before folks start to exit out, let me give you a little bit of guidance for those of you who plan to stay with us. And I also just want to recognize and thank Barbara and Dr. Scott, because we want to be intentional about being intergenerational, and I appreciate them for being here and making sure that we remember from whence we've come. So it is lunchtime, and one of the things that we wanted to do is to be able to take full advantage of the beautiful area that we're in. So lunch is across the street. For those who want and are able and can walk across, it's across the street. There are HRC staff with signs to help direct. There's also a shuttle available downstairs that will take you around and across the street for folks who want that support. And then after lunch, there are 3 options. And so for our folks that are the entrepreneurs that are going to be doing that work, going through the workshops, we've got Dr. Key and Pia and the team from the groups that have been doing that work, which will be at Pier 1 and the port, at the port offices on the ferry corridor there, and then across the street at the Hyatt, we will have some workshops, and inside where we're having lunch, there will also be conversations around reparations. So I wanted to just say that to folks, people with signs, to help direct you to lunch, and then we'll help direct you to the other places as well. But those folks who, with mobility issues or who would like to have a ride across the street, there will be a van downstairs to help move folks. But feel free, there are people with signs that say, need help, ask me. Make sure to check in with them and they'll help you find your way. Thank you, everyone.
Too much like your mother. You are your mother's child. Beautiful. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. You got that right?
Hey, how are you?
All right, y'all, we're going to go ahead and it's break time. We'll go ahead and take a break. And we're going to end this live and we're going to start back up after the lunch and go to the next part of it. So, again, very powerful information. I hope you all are really seeing the power, the innovation, the mental mindset that's really pushing our community forward. And again, we'll come back live after we go to the break session and come back and get you into the next series. So with that being said, community, tune in. We'll see y'all. We're going to be live streaming all the way for the rest of the day. Have a blessed one, y'all.